Welcome to the Freedive Café, episode 21 with Ren Chapman. My name is Donny. I'm the host of the Freedive Café. The Freedive Café is long-form interviews that get into the backstories, the training, the challenges, the passions, the fears, and personal philosophies of the world's freedivers. The Freedive Café can be found at freedivecafé.com. You can find Ren's page there as well as his show notes and all the other episodes. The blog is growing slowly and I'm trying to get a new post on there at least once a week. This week I posted the freediving story of Nace Bagai, filmmaker and underwater cameraman from Sydney. Go check it out. If you want to share your story, please don't be timid. Get in touch and maybe we can share it with the world. And to all of our listeners in the Far East, 新年快乐! Happy Chinese New Year! I'm here in Taiwan and I'm looking forward to celebrating the new year with a few days of diving. The sun is shining and the air is clean. The water is blue. What a great way to start the year. This podcast is made possible by the family of patrons who donate a few dollars each month to the show. If you love the Freedive Café and wish to support me in my quest to continue making this podcast while juggling a full-time job and my other interests, not to mention freediving, then consider becoming a patron. You can find out more about that at patreon.com/freedivecafe. Patreon is Patreon, patreon.com/freedivecafe. Patrons get a few perks, like having their questions asked on the show, and when I hit 100 patrons, I'm going to start releasing a dedicated Q&A episode each month. Another way to support the show that doesn't cost you anything is to head over to audibletrial.com/freedivecafe and sign up for the free 30-day trial there. You can also click on any of the Audible banners on the freedivecafé.com. You get that free 30-day trial and a free audiobook of your choice. It's yours to keep. Audible is king when it comes to audiobooks, and they have more than 100, actually no, I forget if it's 100,000 or 180,000 titles to choose from, but it's really a heck of a lot. It doesn't cost you anything, and Audible throws me a few bucks, so everyone's a winner. That's at audibletrial.com/freedivecafe. On today's episode, I present to you Mr. Ren Chapman. Ren, along with his wife Ashley and their kids, are well known in the freediving community. Ren is a hugely experienced safety diver and has served as chief of safety at most of the high-level competitions. His wife Ashley is a multiple world and national record holder, and she recorded her own interview a couple of weeks ago, which will be coming out next month. Ren and I had an epic conversation. We discussed the life and death of Nick Mavoli and what it takes to be a great safety diver and what goes into organizing the safety for a competition and lots more. Before we get to the interview, let me remind you that Ren, Ashley and freediving legend Carlos Coste are organizing this amazing tour, this amazing freediving adventure holiday of Mexico's cenotes and Maya ruins. This 8-day trip sounds like the ultimate freediving experience. And although I can't go myself this time, the guys have very kindly offered a huge 10% discount on the price of the trip for Freedive Café listeners. It's all inclusive and starts in Cancun, Mexico on February 24th. Get over to cenotesadventure.com. Cenotes is spelled C-E-N-O-T-E-S, so cenotesadventure.com to find out more and tell them Donny from the Freedive Café sent you to get that discount. Okay, it was great talking to Ren. Let me share his story with you. Let's dive. Ren, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the Freedive Café podcast. You're currently in the frozen wastelands of North Carolina, snowed in. unable to set sail. Where were you planning to sail to actually?
Well, we have a course scheduled for this weekend down in Key Largo, Florida. So we were trying to make that. I think what we'll end up doing is getting as far down south as we possibly can. That's about a 5.5 day sail from where we are, and that's if we got the perfect weather and the wind was perfect behind us. Then we'd make it in 5 days. But the last time we had this happen to us, where we couldn't make a class, we parked the boat, got out, rented a car, and drove down to the course. So I think that's probably what we'll end up doing. We normally sail down to the Keys, spend a little bit of time in the Keys. We like to do the Bahamas, but this year we have a cenotes adventure going on the end of February with Carlos Coste, and so we'll sail all the way down to Mexico. We keep our boat in a place called Isla Mujeres, Mexico, and that's kind of where we stage for the cenotes, and then we kind of have a friend there who has a mooring ball, so leaving the boat is fairly safe, and we have some courses going on in the Eastern Caribbean, in Trinidad and then Tobago, towards the middle of March. And then from at the end of March, we have a course in the Cayman Islands. So we leave our boat there until the Cayman trip is over. Then we fly back to Mexico and then sail down to the Bay Islands of Honduras, Roatan, and there. And we'll stage there until Caribbean Cup is over, and then we'll kind of work our way back. We'll schedule a course for the Keys, the Florida Keys again, on our way back north, and then we spend our summers here in North Carolina teaching and doing all sorts of fun stuff.
Right. So I mean, when I look at a map of like the eastern United States, perhaps I'm not getting a sense of scale, but I mean, it seems like North Carolina and Florida are not that far away from each other. But if you're snowed in right now in North Carolina and you sail for 5 days to Florida, do you have sunshine and nice weather and good diving conditions?
Well, that's kind of what we're waiting on right now. Right now the temperatures are so cold, and we're sailing with two young children. So Ani's 4. Our little girl Ani, she's 4, and our new little baby boy, his name is Cape, and he is 3 months old. So, sub-freezing temperatures is not the best idea. So what we're doing is we're waiting around until we get some temperatures that are decent, so we're not freezing to death, and we'll just kind of slowly work our way south, because we don't have to be in Mexico until the end of February. So we'll just kind of cruise down and maybe have a little fun. The fall is a lot of work and a lot of stress with the holidays. And then when we get in the boat, all of that just disappears. And then we can focus on our business and focus on our diving and getting back in shape. The holidays are tough on the body.
Yeah, and congratulations on the birth of Cape. I mean, taking the 3-month baby on the boat. Obviously, you guys have spent quite a bit of time on the water, and but I mean, is that like a lot of extra pressure to have a small baby on the boat, or did you do that with Annie? Was it something that you're used to already?
Yeah, we had done it with Ani. We had a much smaller boat, a much more difficult boat to kind of contain everyone. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be very hard. Ani is at that age where she's into a lot of things, but that's a fun age too. I mean, she's asking questions, and I mean, I think this year will be one of the most fun, one of the funnest years. We have our little 3-month-old is starting to look around, and he's inquisitive about things, and he's no longer just laying there eating and pooping and eating and pooping. He's looking around and smiling at us, and that's just so cool. I really missed having the baby. It's nice not having to change diapers and that sort of thing, but I'm so happy that he's going to be out in the open, pretty much living on the boat. You're living very close to being outside. There's not many walls to your back, so it's nice. It's a good lifestyle. You rise with the sun, you go down with the sun. It's really good living.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm totally jealous, and I think it's an amazing way for like a child to start their life. And I think Annie at 4 years old, it's going to be like every year like exponentially. It's like so much bigger and adventure, and to be out on the boat at 4 years old, it's going to be like it's going to be amazing. I teach kindergarten here in Taiwan, so I'm smothered in 4-year-olds all day, and they're just so much fun.
Yeah, they're great. They're difficult. I mean, you know.
I know. But I mean, I'm laughing all the time. I'm laughing all the time. I'm smiling all the time, no matter how difficult it is. So that's a good life.
Yeah, it really is. We're excited about what's going on.
Mm. And then your itinerary sounds pretty good as well, like from Mexico and then to the eastern. What do you call that part of the world?
The Eastern Caribbean.
Caribbean, yeah.
Yep.
So you kind of just like you're moving away from the winter and taking advantage of warmer climes, and then as the weather starts to get better, you start to head back up north again.
That's exactly what we've been doing.
So let's take it back a little bit, and how about you tell us where you're from, Ren, and like how did you first discover the underwater world?
I am from my hometown is actually where we live now in a place called Wilmington, North Carolina. And Wilmington is right along, it's on the coast. I grew up living on the beach a bit. My father had a little place right on a pretty popular channel. We had a boat parked out back, and I was a little water guy. Grew up in the salt marshes, collecting clams and oysters and fishing. Just a nice little coastal town. My father, in the early '80s, he was working for the university here in Wilmington, University of North Carolina at Wilmington, and he was in the biology department. And they got to a point where they were hiring PhDs. My father had a master's, and they offered him a position over in the health and physical education department, teaching recreation. So he started doing that, and in the program, he became the scuba instructor for the university. He had anywhere from 80 students per semester, and that's how I learned how to scuba dive.
So you learned pretty young then, 6 years old.
6 years old. He had me he made a little pony bottle for me out of an old oxygen tank and put a new head on it. And that was back in the day. They had like horse collar BCs. They call them BCs, buoyancy compensation devices now. Yeah, so at 6 years old, I was scuba diving. I remember the day that we were headed to the pool. We had learned some stuff in the classroom, and we were headed to the pool. And he said to me, he asked me, he said, "Ren, so I want you to tell me what the first rule of scuba diving is." And I said, "Hold your breath." And he said, "Oh, no." I mean, he lost it, because that's the opposite of the proper rule. But I remember driving in the car and him telling me that and making such an impact on me. And I never ever held my breath on scuba dive for obvious reasons. But so now it's kind of interesting. We hold our breath for a living. But back to the story. So I learned to scuba dive at 6. Kind of got away from it, started playing baseball, ended up playing baseball throughout college, got away from I wasn't away from the ocean, but I was away from diving. Scuba took a lot of energy, so you really had to plan that out.
And you played baseball at quite a high level, didn't you?
I played in college, yes. So I kind of got away from the ocean a bit as far as getting in it, diving. And I guess it was about 12 years ago or so. I had a friend who was getting into scuba, and we were actually playing ultimate frisbee. It's where I met Ashley. We were playing ultimate frisbee, and he said, "Yeah, I'm getting into scuba." And I said, "Well, that sounds great. I think I might really like to get back into the ocean again." Because this was years after college was over and no more baseball, and um, I had my own business. I built playgrounds for a living, which was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you test them yourself?
oh yeah, absolutely. You have to. You have
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah.
All for your age group too, the age group you work with for 3 and 4 year olds, which is, a lot of fun. So my friend was getting into scuba, and I said, I'd like to, I have all the gear, I have access to all the gear. We'll just go out there and start scuba diving. So I did, and this was like in April of 2007. And by May, we had started freediving. There was a group of guys that were freediving here in Wilmington. And, for spearfishing is how we kind of got into it. I actually started spearfishing on scuba, and I noticed these guys that were freediving were doing a little better with us than we were, and not exerting a lot of energy, but just in the right way. It's amazing what you see when you're floating versus when you dive down past. I mean, the top side of the water column is just so full of life that you miss if you scuba dive. So we kind of put the tanks up and started free diving. This was so I started scuba back again in April. By May, we were floating around on the surface free diving. And I floundered around. I think I barely touched 19 meters. And I came back up to the surface, and I thought I was going to die. And so my buddy, a couple weeks later, my buddy called me up. He said, "Ren, they teach a course for freediving. Maybe we should check it out." So that fall, we signed up for the intermediate course from performance freediving, and we flew down to Miami, and we sat in class for 2 days and did pool the rest of the time because we had gotten blown out of the ocean portion of the class. We left there. I left the class with a 4:15 breath hold. My buddy had a 5 minute with a samba at the end. So, he was pushing it, which was great. And we came back, and we had learned a lot from the course, but going into the ocean is totally different. Actually doing the dive. I mean, that's the reason why we wanted to take the class, so we could dive deeper, stay longer. So Performance Freediving offered a course in April the following year, and Ashley was starting to show some interest in it. So I brought Ashley to the class with me in the Cayman Islands. She took the course, and my buddy and I, we finished up the ocean portion of the class. And after that class, my buddy had done 118 feet. Let me translate to meters. So my buddy had done 15 meters. I had done 16 meters, and Ashley had done 17 meters. And and that's kind of where we went from there. Ashley started, with that. There was a gentleman by the name of Craig Gentry teaching our class, and Craig looked at Ashley and said, "You have some talent." And Ashley's head gets all big, and And she's like, "Oh, wow, never thought about it." And so Craig asked her to come and train um, with the team, with the U.S. team. Craig had a course going on in Virginia, and they were going to do some diving in a quarry. So Ashley and I drove up there and dove with performance freediving in the quarry. Kirk was there, Kirk Kroc was there, and also Mandy Ray was there. They invited Ashley to the World Championships to be an alternate in Sharm el-Sheikh 2008. That was our first experience with a competition. We swam out and watched these guys dive into nowhere land, which was pretty amazing. And then we watched them do some really amazing feats in the pool. We were just blown away by the whole thing, the competition thing. Ashley had gone from doing 35 meters, 37 or 38 meters before we had left the States to go to the competition. Mm-hmm. She came back and had done just shy of 50 meters. And, the jumps that you make in just a few weeks was just, she was just amazed. That sparked that interest. This was about the time that the economy kind of started to go bad. I felt like my money was going in one pocket and out the other. So we had made a plan. We made a plan about 3 years before. Actually, it was about 4 years before. We had made a plan that we wanted to buy a sailboat within 5 years. And so I looked every night looking for a sailboat. I finally found something, I guess maybe about a year later. And at this point, we'd gotten the hook. We were hooked.
And about, Ren, how long ago was this roughly? Was this about 10 years ago, say?
So 2008 is when we took our first course. 2009, we started doing the professional programs with performance freediving. We did started off with a program called the Safety Supervisor Program, which is basically safety for competition freediving. That led into an assistant instructor program. That led into the instructor program, and we did that all within like 2009. And we were going everywhere. Every time performance freediving was in Fort Lauderdale, we were there. And we even actually drove across country to do the instructor program. We went out to Catalina Island, just off of the coast of Los Angeles, which was a really neat place if you ever get a chance to go. So that's 2009. We came home. We got ourselves together. We bought this boat. I spent about a year putting this boat that we had bought back together, getting it ready for us to sail. We had no kids at this time, so we were just doing everything we could. I sold all of my big, heavy equipment that I had for the playground business, and we got on the boat.
So when you started sailing the boats, were you like teaching freediving? Were you teaching off of the boats?
We were already teaching when we bought the boat. Okay, so we bought the boat in November 2010. In November 2011, we sailed out. 2010, spring of 2010, the first Deja Blue, we did, or might have been the second Deja Blue. Either way, Ashley did two national records, and then the fall of 2010, we left on the boat, and we trained throughout. We went to the Keys, and then to the Bahamas, and spent most of our time training there before we got back on the boat and sailed down to the Cayman Islands. And in the spring of 2011, Ashley broke her first world record, and that was 62 meters no fins. And then the next day she did 63 meters. 63 meters was Ashley's first world record. Then Natalia broke it at 64. Ashley broke it again at 65. And then Natalia bluffed her. Natalia she announced like 67 or 68. It was 68. She announced 68. And Ashley said, "Oh, okay, I got to go for it." This was our little fun, like beginner free diver. Just you. Ashley had just broken these two world records, and for Natalia to come back and do a 66 is what happened. When Natalia ended up announcing, so we started watching Egypt. This was the Red Cup was going on. We started looking at Egypt and noticed that Natalia had done had done the 66. Well, we normally only do like 2 meter jumps, and especially at the end of a real big dive, like a world record, type of dive. So, I mean, what else? Basically, she had announced 68. Ashley had no other choice but to either, take her chances or still be the world record holder for more than 2 days. So she went for 69 meters.
Wow.
And Natalia didn't do her dive, and Ashley blacked out when she hit the surface. So, yeah, you know what? It was a great experience. It was exciting, and
Kind of like an initiation of fire in the competition world then.
it was exactly. I mean, there's a real competition going on. There really is. And that she put it right in our face. She was the wiser, the smarter free diver, and she had outsmarted us. That all that did was just spark a bigger fire. So 2000, that same year, 2012, we go to vertical blue for the first time. I'm a safety diver there. And
did you ever take part in competitions yourself, Ren, or was it always like from the get go? Was there a definite kind of a split in the way that you and Ashley? Was it very much that you were focused on Ashley's competition development and progress, and you kind of just stayed on the sidelines for that?
Yeah, I think I tell you what, more these days as I get older and more mature, I feel like I would like to focus on myself a bit, because all the focus has been on Ashley. So I'm almost programmed to have that focus. And I really like being busy. I like doing things. I like making things happen. I'm good on the boats. I'm good in the water. I'm a really good. I think that I am a really good safety diver. I sure have seen a lot of it. I've seen safety diving that I like, and I've seen safety diving that I don't like. So I've been around it long enough. I've been doing it for long enough that I feel that I felt like that was my place.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, you're a very experienced safety diver. You've been involved in safety for all the big competitions like Vertical Blue and Caribbean Cup, Deepsea Challenge, the World Championships. So I mean, did you just organically fall into following that path of safety diving?
Yeah, absolutely. I was following Ashley around. I was participating. I love to dive. I love to be in the ocean. I tell you what, I see more competitive free dives. I've probably seen more competitive free dives than almost anyone. I mean, there's some guys that have been doing it in the Mediterranean for much longer, and guys like Kirk Kroc and Martin. If you've been there, you've seen a lot. But safety diving, you see everyone dive. When a competitive free diver comes out to the competition line, what do they see? Maybe 10 or so dives in a session, and then they do their dive and then they leave. If they see that many people dive in the time span that they're there, I see them all. I see every one of them. It's a really cool position. I see all the little tricks that everyone's doing, and it's neat. I think it puts me in a place where I have a really good understanding uh, of freediving and what these guys are doing and how they're doing it and what it takes to do it. Man, you have to be a very, very dedicated person to excel at this sport. William Trubridge is the hardest freediving human on the planet. He dives all the time. When he's not diving, he's thinking about diving. That is why he is one of the best, because he's always doing it. He's there. He built a 25-meter pool in his backyard, lane pool in his backyard. He lives in the best freediving location there is as far as competitive freediving. It's calm, it's quiet, it's tranquil, it's a special, special place. And if you haven't been there and have never dove there, you should definitely go to Long Island. The people on Long Island are such nice people. They will open up their arms and say, "Hey, here it is. Let me show you this. Let me show you that." There's some of the nicest people you'll ever meet are in the island of Long Island.
Yeah, I'm definitely planning to get there at some point. It's probably going to be a year or two down the line, but it's got to happen.
You know, I've been listening to some of your podcasts, and one of your questions is what's the best places that you had dove, and to me, it's almost like sailing. People ask us all the time, what is your favorite island? And the answer is always, well, that's a hard one. But really, it's actually the next one. It's going to be the next great freediving location with blue water and corals that are just coming out of the ocean. That's the next great freediving location. It's got blue water. It's got deep water. You got a little bit of current. Even if you have current, you can deal with it. Like Tim does. You know, there's the oceans are so beautiful, and there's a lot of places, a lot of cool places. But if you're into competitive deep freediving, then you must check out Dean's Blue Hole. You must check it. Look, there's some pros and cons. I mean, the pros is Dean's Blue Hole. The cons is it's hard living. It's the Bahamas are sort of almost like a desert. It's basically a real thin layer of topsoil over limestone, hard limestone. So growing agriculture there is not that great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might get everything's kind of imported there.
It's all been on a boat for at least 3 or 4 days. It's not. That's the only thing wrong with Long Island is for a freediver who is willing to. Well, I mean, look, William does it. He does it. They actually. I mean, if a bunch of freedivers moved to Long Island, they would probably up the amount of produce that comes, or they could special order. But that's the hardest part of the whole Long Island is the food, because everything else is just perfect.
Let's skip back a little bit to the safety diving. You said that you'd seen some safety diving that you liked and some that you didn't like. What do you think are the most important qualities one must have if they are considering becoming a safety diver?
Well, you have to be a good diver to begin with. It's good to have. You need to be pretty strong. When I say strong, you have to be a very, very proficient swimmer. You have to have a good breath hold. And you have to be able to do all that comfortably at 30 meters, because that's where the person's expecting you to be. And you need to be there when the person is expecting you to be there.
Yeah. So let's say on an average day of competition, how many times do you think you actually dive on a day?
It depends on the size of your team. If I'm doing safety diving just for let's say we have 4 or 5 guys out just doing some warm-up stuff, and I'm by myself doing safety dives, I probably do in the neighborhood of 45 or 50 dives.
45 or 50 dives to 20, 30 meters?
45 or 50 dives. Well, you know what? If I'm doing, it's probably more like half of that, 20 dives beyond 20 meters, let's say. And really, that's a lot. Let's say
it's really quite a huge volume, especially over time.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about. I mean, trust me. I like being well rested, so I'm at least a good 5 or more minutes in between a 30-meter dive. You know, I like having plenty of time.
Yeah, sure.
Just in case I need to extend my time.
Yeah, I imagine you probably get a pretty good night's sleep at the end of the day as well.
Oh man, that's the hardest work. I was. You see, I spend my winters, my fall and winters, like trying to gain some weight.
Right.
Because when we get into the competition season, that goes very quickly.
Just drops off. Yeah, it's just so hard to get enough calories in the body to maintain the weight, right?
I can't eat enough. I come home and my grandparents I come home and my grandmother says, Ren, you're skinny. I'm eating.
Yeah, and they try to feed you up after that.
Oh yeah, she does a good job.
I understand you're pretty good friends with Nick Bavoli. Let's touch on this a little bit before we move on. Nick was the first diver to die in 20 plus years of AIDA competitions. That happened in 2013 at Vertical Blue.
That's correct.
That was after an American no fins record attempt. I forget what he was shooting for there. Was it about 72 or 70 something?
72.
Like that? Yeah, okay.
72.
You were there that day. Perhaps you can give us some insight into what happened. So what happened that day, and what lessons can be learned from Nick's tragic death?
Well, what happened with Nick wasn't that particular day. What happened with Nick started kind of when he started freediving. He was a very good freediver. I mean, his first intermediate course, kind of it wasn't even an intermediate course. It was a training in the Bahamas. He had gone from within 2 weeks, he had gone from 50 meters to 70 meters. That's a pretty quick jump. And before his 50 meters, he was a 30-meter guy.
Right.
And that was, I'm talking like within a month or two.
Yeah, these are huge jumps.
Huge jumps in a very, very short period of time. That following fall, after that, we were doing some, I think he had done, actually, take that back, because he had gone down and done Deja Blue in the spring. So that was the winter. Actually, it was December 2010. He went down and did Deja Blue in 2011 in the Cayman Islands. He ended up getting a national record in constant weight, and decided he was just going to cold turkey and do this was at like 92, I think his national record was in 2011. And he decided, well, if I can do 92 constant weight, then I should be able to do 89 free immersion, which was another national record, which was just really if I look back on it, just thinking, it was insane. He wasn't having any problems. He wasn't out. He wasn't having any squeezes. You know, we have a rule where if you basically the rule is if there's more spit than blood, then you're out for at least 2 weeks, and then we assess the situation.
Right.
If
I
you
think
have
mean that more blood than spit.
Yeah, I'm sorry, more blood than spit, then you're out for at least 2 weeks, and then we assess. If you spit, if there's more spit than blood, so just little specks, then you're out of the water for at least a week, and we assess the situation after that. And there was so we watched him pretty close. He didn't have any problems with squeezes. Well, we kind of knew this was going to be a pretty big dive for him, considering he had never even done free immersion. I mean, he does free immersion on a shallow pull down for warm up, but not a big full on free immersion dive. So we had the safety kind of all set up, where we had a gentleman dive down. You know, we're in the Cayman Islands, so you have 40 meters of visibility. We had one of our safety divers dive down and kind of be the lookout, so that we would get an idea of how he was doing, how he was progressing, and that way the number one guy, which is the deep guy, the 30-meter guy, didn't have to concentrate on that throughout his, that first 10 meters or so. And everything looked fine. And Nick got to about 25 meters. He met the first safety down there, the safety diver, but you could tell he was struggling with his dive, probably having some pretty difficult contractions at this point. And he eventually blacked out at about 22 meters. And so we got him to the surface, and he came around fairly quickly, but came up coughing blood, and got him on the boat. He was fine. He swam over on his own. We watched him, got him on the boat, and got him on some oxygen, gave him to a person, a safety diver on the boat, and then we went on with the competition. That was his first time he ever squeezed. It was a nice, really nice squeeze, if you could ever call them nice. But so that was in the spring. In the fall of 2011, in the summer, in August, we were training for Team Worlds in France, 2011, Nice. He had goals. He set his goal at 95 meters to break the national record and to be in the 90s for Worlds. So we get down to the blue hole, and we're doing our thing, and Nick does his dive, and he squeezes. And he is very, very angry. He climbs out on the beach, throws his monofin down, and I'm telling you this because I want you to know the kind of mentality that he had, it's a mentality that if you want to be a good freediver, you can't possess.
You're right. Mm-hmm.
You can't act like this. You can't be this way in your mind. You have to be clear and free. He threw his monofin on the beach and marched down the beach, very, very angry with himself. He knew he had gone too far, and he knew he had hurt himself. And we weren't going to allow him to dive if he squeezed. Right. And we did. Actually, we did let him dive. We compromised because he squeezed at 77 meters, or 75 meters. He squeezed in Dean's Blue Hole. 2 weeks later was the competition, and we as the team, we got together, and Ashley and Ted Hardy decided that it would be best if you can dive, but you got to limit it so we limited to 65 meters. And he stormed out of the meeting and was very, very furious. But I mean, that was our rule that we had. I mean, this is something that Kirk Kroc had established through our teaching. I mean, through his teaching, and that I mean, if we were going to, if people were going to listen to what we say, we had to abide by these rules, which we believe in. So he ended up doing 65 meters. And I remember his attitude. I was there on the line with him there in Nice, and he looked at the two safety divers. He came up, did his protocol, and the two safety divers, which are, I think they were actually pretty famous free divers. One of them's a big free diver in Monaco, and big names. They were safety diving for this competition. And he looks at it, and they came up and they said, "Hey, Nick, that was a great dive. And he was like, oh, I should not have been doing that dive. He just had this attitude, and that was just not conducive to good free diving.
So there's a lot of negativity behind his free diving.
A lot of tension, a lot of negativity. He was an amazing athlete. An amazing athlete. He did things that so fast it was ridiculous. That was his problem. He had done this way too fast. Anyway, let's get back with the story. And we kind of separated after that. We kind of separated ourselves from Nick. He was still our friend, but we were going to give him a little space because this was not what we wanted. This is not the kind of attitude we wanted around us as we're trying to improve our freediving. The next time I saw Nick, he had just come back from, the next time I saw Nick was in 2013. Okay? The fall of 2013 for Vertical Blue. Okay, the Vertical Blue that he passed away on. His last competition. Now, before that, he had been on the competition. On the competition trail, he had done a competition in Greece. It may have been the Individual Worlds. I'm not really sure. He had, he's writing in his blog where he's spitting up blood on the roads in Greece. And then he comes to us. When I say us, the safety, and we're having to deal with it now. And I tell you what, at this time, Nick wasn't the only one having issues. There were quite a few other people that were having some times with squeezing.
Right, so it's becoming a growing problem at this point in the competition culture.
It was widespread. It was widespread. It was a sickness. Everybody was getting deep very, very quickly, and it was addictive. And it addicted them. And they were not prepared. Their bodies were not prepared. So yeah, 2013, Vertical Blue. We're back to the original story about what happened to Nick on this particular day. 3 days before Nick's death, it might have been 3 or 4 days after before Nick's death, Nick was out practicing. And I try and be in front of all the free divers when they're diving. I try to safety for them all before any of the competitions come about, before the competition begins, just so you know their technique, you know their style, you know where they want you to meet them, you know how much talking they want done to them, you know how much they want after. You want to be in front of the diver as much as possible, especially if you're going to rescue them or have to rescue them. The guys that we have to rescue, we know there's a good chance that they're going to need some assistance because we've watched them from the day they got off the plane until the day the competition's over. We've been watching them every single day. The same guys, the same group of free divers every single day. As soon as they get there, this year in Roatan, I was there August 1st. There were three competitive freedivers there. From the day one, August 1st, I was there until the last competition. On every single day, not on every dive, but I watched every single athlete before they even started competing. So back to Nick. Nick had actually had a squeeze 3 days before, a decent squeeze. He's coughing and he's spitting blood.
That was during his training for the competition?
That was during his training, right before the competition. On a no fins dive, I'm not sure the depth. I'm not even sure the depth. Close to his max. Well, obviously his max. He made the dive, but he was spitting up blood. And then the day of the competition, the day that he died, he set the plate at 72. And, at that point, all the guys were like, yeah, I saw him do this dive and he wasn't in the greatest position. We made the adjustment, and he did the dive. And the first safety diver met him at 30 meters. I met him around 23 meters, 22 meters, 23 meters, and he was struggling. He was fighting harder than anybody I've ever seen fight to get to that surface. I've seen a lot. I mean, Ashley is a constant weight, no fins person. And I've seen a lot of constant constant weight, no fins divers. And I've never seen anyone struggle or fight as hard as Nick. To this day, I do not understand how he didn't black out. I mean, to this day, I've looked at the videos. I've looked at the video once, and this was maybe about 4 or 5 months ago. I saw the video again for the first time, and I still don't understand how he didn't black out when he hit the surface. He missed the line coming up. He was breathing, doing his recovery breathing, but obviously struggling. He finally grabbed the line. He turns around the line, and with his nose clip on, he gives the okay sign. And then he pulls it, and then he notices that he did it wrong. He pulls the nose clip, and he says, "I'm okay again." And he just sits back. And as he's sitting back, he's starting to. Everybody knows he didn't do the protocol. Everybody knows it. And he knows it. And he's breathing, nothing abnormal. His color didn't just pop back, but he was working on it. And I remember Carla Hansen was the judge, and she said, "I'm sorry, Nick." And basically, Nick kind of stared up into the sky and pretty much gave up right there on the spot. It was the strangest experience that as far as a safety freediver, it was the strangest thing I'd ever seen. I'd never seen another person react that way and wait so long to black out. It's almost as if he was heartbroken. He had put everything he possibly could in this dive, and he didn't get it. And at that point, he kind of surrendered, and we did the protocol that we normally do. He didn't respond to the protocol, which is basically we blow and tap and talk 3 times to try to wake him up, to get him breathing again. We got him over onto the platform, and basically the safety divers turned him over to the medical team because of I think that knowing what I know now and learning things that I have learned since then about advanced life support and life support in general. I think that maybe there was a bit of a blunder on the medical team's spot there. Basically, there was an inadequate airway established, which two people were trying to do on their own, and let me just tell you, that's a minimum 3 person. Really, 4 people is the best situation to do any sort of advanced resuscitation on a victim. There was this was actually my first competition that I was chief of safety for. Yeah. And my thoughts were, okay, I could give this over. The medical stuff. I'm not a physician, and I wasn't a paramedic. I'm still not a paramedic. I'm trained in advanced resuscitation, but I am not a licensed paramedic, and I'm not a physician. So at the time, I gave that to someone who was a physician, and another person who was a paramedic, and that's a mistake that I will never make again. The assumption that that an individual or individuals are going to be doing what they should be doing. Listen, those 2 people that were on the platform doing this advanced resuscitation did everything they possibly could with what they had and what they knew. Okay? They did but in my book, that wasn't enough. I mean, it obviously wasn't enough. And I don't know that there are many competitions besides the few that I work on that do have the adequate persons on a platform or on the boat.
Do you mean still to this day?
Well, I don't know because I just know that in 2012 we had what I thought was, or in 2013 I thought we had the best. I thought we had everything that we needed. We had a physician, we had a paramedic, we had a pretty good safety team, we had oxygen, we had an escape, we had an evacuation car. I thought we had it all. We didn't. We needed more oxygen. We needed multiple trained paramedics or a physician that is practicing in an emergency room. I want a pulmonologist. I want a guy who doesn't do anything but resuscitate people all day long. That's the physician that I want. At the time we didn't have that. So we might have suffered a bit in that category. Would that have saved Nick's life? Possibly.
Ultimately, Nick basically, how to put this, but he did everything wrong in terms of how he was approaching his sport, setting his goals too high, rushing to the numbers. So when it came to the day and the situation, he compounded everything so much that the situation was as bad as it could get, basically. The situation was as bad as it could get because he actually put us all in that situation, and we let him do it. I hate that someone has to die to get people really on it and in the game and where we should be as a sport. But I think that's
That's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a real shift, and we if we see a squeeze, I mean, basically for the competitions that I do now, you have to see the doctor. Otherwise, you can't come out to the platform. If the doctor clears you, and then there's everyone's getting squeezed a bit when you're pushing these limits and trying to do it fast and getting off an airplane and doing it in warmer water than normal, and just everything's new. You get off the plane and you set the line at 94 meters, you're going to have a problem. You can't go into diving like that. You just can't do it. You can't do it. Not free diving.
So you
Not
believe
climbing
that,
Everest.
yeah. Do you believe that enough lessons have been learned from Nick's death?
Look, it's this sport. This sport is there's a culture around this sport. If we shame these guys for, you don't want to shame them for squeezing, because we're all, we've all done it. Listen, another reason that I never did the competition free diving was I would squeeze. I wouldn't get myself comfortable enough. I always was thinking something else, and I would squeeze. So it happens. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen when you're pushing barriers and you're new and you maybe have bad technique. You're possibly going to get a squeeze. I think Nick's and some of the squeezes at that time were beyond anything that we're seeing these now. No one's squeezing like Nick Mavoli did. No, but nobody's doing that. Not that I've seen in the past years. I haven't seen it. If I see it, I'm like, whoa, I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not going to happen again like that.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of seen the light.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you regarding educational organizations like AIDA or CMAS or PFI? Is there anything that you think is commonly taught by these organizations in their safety curriculum that you believe is maybe a little bit misguided or even dangerous? I'm not trying to lead you into that and suggest that there is. I'm just curious to see what you think as somebody who's so deeply involved in the safety side of freediving yourself.
Well, look, we're teaching people who want to go deeper, and they want to stay longer, and those are the people that are coming to take a class. Okay? If you give them a simple rule and look them in the eye and if you say to them, if you bleed, you're creating possible life-term damaging things to your body, to the most important organ of your body. You could be damaging that. Okay? We don't know if this will be a problem in the future. We do not know this. I think we have some pretty good ideas, but don't do it. If you do it, you're going too far. Back yourself up.
Yep. So let's move on. Let's lighten things up a little bit.
I like the serious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's really good that we talk about that. I mean, it was also, it's something that's been brought up a lot in the podcast over the last, since the podcast emerged, 6 months ago, because the World Championships were not long after that, and there was a lot of controversy about what was happening there as well, and then what happened in Kalamata was still in everybody's memory, and that's been brought up a lot on the podcast. So part of the reason that we have this podcast is to get this out in the open and talk about it, so hopefully it raises the awareness, because I see personally a lot of people getting into freediving who still don't understand the consequences of going too deep too quickly. So it's important that we talk about it.
Yeah.
So you and Ashley are your school is Evolve Freediving. Um, tell us about the school and what makes it unique. I mean, it's not really a location-based school, is it? You kind of like it's you and Ashley, and you sort of move around and teach here and there.
Yeah, we like to bring students to places that are unique and places that we like to go. So, um, yeah, we're kind of a traveling show. Uh, we learned that from Kirk Kroc, who has been teaching in North America for quite some time now. I think since around 2004. Um, so we just kind of copied his show. We we teach a performance freediving curriculum,
So what is it
which
about?
we think it's the best.
Mhm. So I actually have this question because a lot of people are not familiar with PFI. What is it about PFI that makes it a good choice?
Well, it's very well organized. We have a really nice manual with color pictures. It's Kirk Kroc developed this curriculum uh, just after he had done a. Hold on, let me make sure I'm not telling fit. I could be making stuff up. Ashley told me don't make stuff up. Basically, Kirk Kroc developed the program um, at the same around just before he coached Martin Stepanek to some world records. Um, Martin split up with him, had been teaching with Kirk for quite some time, and Martin split up with him and started uh, FII, which is Freedive Instructors International, and Kirk stuck with the performance freediving. And so basically, your question was um, why do I think it's a good product? Well, I think the priority is on the safety of the freediving. Um, the whole in a 2-day course, the whole first day is on safety, uh, and then after we're done with that, we go into the breathing and that sort of thing. But I tell you, it's kind of a proven method uh, as far as what Kirk does. Freediving can go a lot of different ways, and I think you put your priorities in the right place where it's safety for performance freediving, and then once that's established, then you have like a grounds to break off and do more, or to go better yourself or get deeper or whatever. Uh, so I don't know. To tell you the truth, Donnie, I don't know what's going on in AIDA. I don't know why PFI is better.
Okay.
It's been proven. It has a great curriculum. I mean, it's very structured, and when we have slides that go out forever, with videos. I mean, it's a nice product. Our students are very, very successful. I mean, it's like any instructor is going to tell you when you can just blow people's mind, they're like, wow, this is incredible. Uh, but any agency is going to do it as long as they also push that this is potentially dangerous and this is what's important here.
Yeah, it really comes down to the instructors at the end of the day, like how professional the instructor is, not so much the curriculum, because
That's good.
in a sense, the curriculum really should be pretty much, there should be very little difference between the curriculums throughout the organizations, since we're all doing the same simple activity
Exactly.
here, right? What about tell us about your cenotes trip with Carlos Coste, because I'm pretty interested in that. What are these cenotes? I understand there's some kind of like freshwater
Yeah.
sinkholes in Mexico. How will this course, how will it take shape?
So basically, it's not really a course. A lot of the prerequisites are you have to have at least I guess in AIDA it's a 1-star freediver level course. So it's not a beginner, say, course, but it is a training. We'll spend the mornings training in a deep cenote. The cenotes are pretty interesting. Basically, it's a cavern that's been created in the limestone of the area, and it's fresh water. If you're close to the coast, you could have like a little saltwater lens. Mm-hmm. You've probably seen the sulfur layer.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Well, below the sulfur layer, there's or sometimes above or below, there's a saltwater layer as well. So you'll be in fresh water, and then you'll actually go through into the saltwater. It's pretty interesting. But if you go inland, these lenses are a little deeper. So most of the time when you go into the interior of the Yucatan Peninsula, the cenotes are all freshwater, and they can get quite deep. We'll dive in our cenote as deep as 130 meters. And we'll dive in cenotes as deep as 15 meters. But what we do is we'll split that up. So we'll do a deep cenote in the morning and a shallow cenote for pictures in the mid-afternoon when the sun's got some really cool rays going through, and they make nice pictures.
Nice. Yeah, I really I hope to be able to come out there myself and join you guys and do this at some point. It sounds awesome.
Hey, yeah, if you don't get a chance to do it with us, you still have to get out there. There's quite a few guys doing trips out of Playa del Carmen.
Alejandro Lemu does quite a lot of stuff at those cenotes as well. Yeah.
Alejandro does quite a bit, so maybe we'll run into Alejandro this time. Last time we ran into his buoys. He had his buoys in this really amazing cenote. It's a beautiful setting. The hole's probably maybe 20 meters in diameter, and there's kind of a cave built over the top with just a little hole down in the top of it. But it's about I think it's about a 92 meter hole, which is pretty cool. And there's enough room in this thing just to put about 4 or 5 buoys, and that's it. But it's a lot of fun, and it's a neat adventure. We do Mayan ruins as we're cruising through. It's a neat trip.
I'm kind of thinking, maybe not next year, but the year after, I'm going to try and do a bit of a world tour and see all these places and meet all these people that I've been talking to. So maybe I'll come and hang out with you guys for a while too.
Hey man, anytime.
Yeah, I'll also be able to keep your kids entertained for a while with my extensive kindergarten experience.
Okay, I like that idea.
We have some people who support the show on Patreon, and I'm now opening up the episodes for a little bit of a Q&A session so that Patreon supporters get a chance to ask their questions. And I did get a few questions for you. So first of all, we've got Nace Bagay, who's from Sydney. I've actually spoken to Nace quite a bit. He's a really lovely guy. He's an underwater photographer. Nace wants to know, what is it like to be Chief of Security?
Well, it's the biggest position at a freediving competition. The organizer, whoever else, whatever else, it doesn't matter. It does matter to get all those people there. But when the competition starts, that chief of safety is the head honcho. He has to be the head honcho. There has to be one boss, and then maybe other little bosses beyond, but he has to be the boss. He has to be knowledgeable about every aspect of the setup that you have. If you're on a boat, he has to know how to run the boat. If he's
If he's on a platform, he has to know how it was tied. He has to tie it down. He has to know every step of that platform. The chief of safety has to have amazing people around him, the best people around him. If they're not the best, you get rid of them quick. If you feel that they're not the best, you got to get rid of them. Okay, this is a serious, serious business. People can die, and it's very, 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 very important job. Okay, what else? What else do you have to be the safety chief? What else? How else does it feel to be the safety chief? You know, again, you're the boss, and maybe not everybody likes what the boss has to say, but it doesn't matter. You're the boss. But I think that it's very important for the people that work with you to respect you. If not, then you're probably not going to do too well as the boss. So if people respect you, you have good people around you, then being the chief of safety is an easy job.
All right, let's go on to Alex Davis.
Okay.
Who's in?
Are these guys listening to me now? They're like, "Oh my God, this guy."
They will be. Alex Davis is in Barbados. I think Alex is actually a freediving instructor as well. So he wants to know, what is the deepest you've had to rescue a diver?
The deepest I've ever rescued someone. I would say somewhere in the 35-meter range. I'm trying to think who it was.
So was that a situation where you were maybe down at 30 meters and you saw he was struggling or she was struggling beneath you and you had to dive again to make the rescue?
No. Basically, what happens is you end up training. You end up training guys. Unfortunately, and it's just, you know, I take this back. I think my deepest was somewhere around 33 or so. When you're at 30 meters waiting on someone, 33 meters is right there. I mean, so it's not like that big a deal. I'm sure this was on a training dive. You know what? I don't even remember. I've done a lot of rescues.
Right, yeah, so too many to really be specific at this point. But 30 to 33, that's still pretty deep, right?
A lot of the times it all happens in competition because, you know, in training, people aren't trying to black out. Or they're not pushing as hard, so they're not blacking out as much. Because the end of the game is you got to be conscious when you hit the surface and 15 seconds afterwards, right? So, I mean, most guys are training to do that. When the guys are blacking out deep, they're really like doing it's a competition situation. So I was listening to someone talk on your podcast the other day about a rule for maybe blacking out in the competition.
Yeah, well, as far as I know, in CMAS competitions, blackouts result in disqualification.
Okay.
Is that the rule that you're referring to?
Well, I mean, maybe. I mean, it sure would help out on the surface.
Yeah. I mean, this has come up quite a few. Yeah, this has come up quite a few times. I believe that is the rule in CMAS, and as far as I know, there's a lot of support for that. You know, it kind of would, you know, if it was introduced into the AIDA competitions or other competitions, it would certainly take the edge off of things, and you know, maybe the divers would, you know, they just know that can't happen, so their training and eventually their actual competition dives might be a little bit more conservative.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to, you know, it kind of makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. I'm not one to make rules, obviously, but
I mean, there are some rules that need to be addressed.
Yeah. And as a safety diver, you would certainly welcome not having to put yourself in more danger as well if there was a rule like that initiated.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think I mentioned just a second ago that we trained a diver. The safety team trained this guy. He was doing I would say probably 10 meters beyond his limit, diving deep, 117 meters. And the first time he tried it, he blacked out at about 20. No, I can't tell you the timeline, but he blacked out twice. The first time we picked him up, I had the scooter with me. I was riding on the scooter. I met him at 45 meters. He was free immersion. He was doing free immersion up. And at 25 meters, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and he blacked it. He had a loss of motor control at 25 meters. We get him to the surface. He comes back around. Everything's good. No squeezing. Nothing. No trauma. Everything's good. He goes back home. 2 days later, he's out doing the same dive, and this time we pulled him up from about 50 meters via the counterballast. And this is a story in itself. In fact, I got some slack from it because of Dive. I posted a video on the AIDA board asking a question: should the counterbalance have been activated? At the time, I was sitting beside. I was watching the dive from the boat that housed Dive Eye, and they had a monitor there, and I was watching the dive.
The World Championships this
year.
This
was at the World Championship.
Right,
I just want to tell you this. Want to tell you the story of training the diver.
Yep.
Basically, we saw him. It was me, two other judges, and the organizer were watching this dive on this Dive Eye camera, the live feed. It probably looked exactly what your feed looks like when you're looking at it on the internet. And Waleed, well, I'll tell you the diver's name was Waleed. Okay, great. So he grabs the line, and to me, looked like he missed it. And he actually did miss it. This was at 70 meters. Now, Waleed's got a really, really good form. He's really, really relaxed. I mean, so relaxed that he looks like he's, kind of having a samba, sort of. I remember when I first started safety freediving, well, not when I first started, but when I did the two vertical blues competitions, Waleed would exhale at like 15 meters. And, when you see someone exhale, you're thinking, oh, he's blacking out, because that's the first thing that happens is they expel. It wasn't quite 15 meters, but it was somewhere in the 10 meter range. And, we had to we trained ourselves that, okay, Waleed exhales before he gets to the surface. We know this. He's not blacked out. We're not going in on him. So Waleed, back to the World Championship, Waleed does, at 70 meters, he misses the line. And so at that point, the organizer, two well-known safeties are not safeties, but judges are beside me. And we're watching this video, and he gets up to about 60 meters and he looks like he misses again. And then he makes it up to about 55 meters or so. I'm not sure of those numbers, somewhere in that neighborhood. It looks like he does these little short pulls that looks like he's missing it. It looked like he missed it twice. And everybody screamed, release the counterbalance, release the counterbalance. I jumped off the bow of the boat, jumped onto the platform, started pulling the counterballast in. We this was actually a practice dive. It wasn't during the competition. It was training before. And we get him. He gets up to he meets the safety. He actually grabs the line because he noticed as he was pulling, he was getting more on it. So he felt that the line was being brought up. So he grabs the line at like 30 or 40 meters. He made it up to the safety divers. Grabs the line and just starts shooting up. And he gets to the surface and he does his recovery breaths and he looks over and he says, "What happened? Everything okay?" And everybody is freaking out. I mean, we're beside ourselves. It's a long ways from 50 meters to 117 meters. What is that? 67 meters away. That's a long way for the plate to have to reach Waleed before it actually grabbed him and pulled him up. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we didn't take any chances on that one. And when we go back and look at the footage, we're like, oh man, maybe we did make a mistake because we didn't see any misses.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, like it's
no, at the end of the day, it's fine. I mean, we did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, in that situation, yeah, there's only really one choice to make. If you think that something's wrong, there's only really one choice to make when it comes to the counterballast, right?
Well, he had like I said, the previous dive, he blacked out at 30 meters, 25, 30. So that was the how we trained him was on the next dive. Okay, on the next dive, he does another 117. This is 3 or 4 days later. He does another 117, and on the way up, we're pretty much begging him to get up the line. I mean, we're watching the footage because at this point at the World Championship, I had a screen on the platform that I was watching every single dive so that when I saw something going wrong, I could quickly make the decision to call the counterballast or do whatever we needed to do. So that was a really neat trick. But on his last dive, 117 meters, he's pulling up and we're pretty much, everybody's begging him, come on, Waleed, come on, Waleed. And he does just fine. He gets to the safety diver. And he looks over at the safety diver and does this like little shimmy like he's blacked out. And I think he was probably narked out because what he did was, instead of getting the free ride up by the safety diver, he just pretty much grabbed onto the rope as if he was going to be pulled up by the counterballast. And at that point, the safety divers grabbed him and swam him the rest of the way up. But it's funny that the little bit of safety can train people to do interesting things. We train Waleed a little bit to do negative things. Yeah, was it negative or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's it's a learning process, and sometimes the outcomes don't match the expectations, right? When everything is new and the environment is new and the system is new. I mean, do you think that the dive eye is going to make a massive difference for you guys in the future?
Oh man, I can already tell. Well, there was a to me the dive eye, if you want a truly hands down safe competition, and there's no doubts about it, I'm gonna prop these guys up big because it is big. When you can see every movement, you can react super quick. If someone gets tangled, for instance, in a ghost line down there, and you need to react by releasing the counterballast or whatever kind of situation you need to have, that thing sees it before we could ever even think about seeing it. I mean, we're seeing it live. If you don't have that, we have a protocol where you wait a certain amount of seconds before you release the counterballast. When you don't see him move on a depth sounder, everybody that's used a depth sounder knows that there's little glitches in the depth sounder.
There's not a glitch in the feed from a camera, a live camera. You're seeing it live. And at that point, every second counts. I mean, 10 seconds can make a pretty big difference. So yeah, I think it's a super safe way to do a competition. And if it's not dive I can promise you those guys that somebody else is going to come in and do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it needs to be done.
Yeah. Alex also wants to know, aside from good communication, what are some key principles, organizational principles, that you apply to ensure that all the safety divers work together? I think he's referring to things like maybe like checklists and things like this.
Oh yeah. Well, really, one of the most important aspects of a smooth running safety team are that they dive a lot together. I mean, I say that if you're going to be a safety diver, you should be on site diving with the divers, the guys that you're going to safety with, for at least 2 weeks prior to doing the dive. That way you sort of mesh. You're a team. You're not just a safety diver, out diving this competition. You're on the safety team. It's a team effort. Everyone has to be there in order for it to get done, and that's the biggest key. The biggest key to a quality safety team.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You can't really just put 4 random safety divers in the water together, no matter how good they are, and expect them to function well as a team, right?
Yeah, well, I said it earlier, but you want to dive with all the divers so they become comfortable with you. If they're comfortable with you, then their performances are going to be much more comfortable. Their performances are going to be better because they trust you, because you've been there for the past 4 weeks, diving right beside them. So yeah, that's the most important key. Now, as far as checklists are concerned, we have a checklist for everything. We have a checklist for all the equipment that we have to take on the boat, for all the equipment on the boat, for all the medical gear. We have checklists. I mean, coming everywhere, and there's people responsible for certain areas. For instance, we had a couple of guys responsible for the medical kit. We had a couple of guys responsible for setting up the platforms. We have a couple of folks responsible for setting all the lines. There's a lot of responsibility there, and we delegate it around. When we're actually in the competition zone, we still have checklists. We do, basically we bring the competitor into the zone, and we bring them in nice and comfortably. We ask them before they get into the zone, how you doing today? How you feel? That's great. I'm glad you're here. It's a beautiful day out on the platform. Here are the conditions, as you could probably see. We do this before the competition, but it's fun to kind of, if the diver's interested in having a conversation with you, then I tell the guys, hey, have fun with these guys if they want to. If they're serious, leave them in a nice serious zone. Just tell them what you need to tell them. We make them, the actual athlete, attach their lanyard to the rope. Okay? That way they feel their lanyard going around their tether to the world. Okay? They're now, with their own hands, they've tethered themselves. So they feel comfortable again, right? They're back in their comfort zone. Now all they have to do is breathe. And what we do is there's a primary safety diver and a secondary safety diver. And there's a number 3 guy, and then there's a number 4 guy. And sometimes at the World Championship, we had a roamer who was watching both lines. Okay? We call him the roamer. He's the swimmer. He hangs out on the surface. If there's anything that needs done, he does it. The number 1 guy, he's the primary safety. Now, he is going to be meeting the diver, meeting the diver or the competitor at 30 meters, or wherever the competitor wants to be met. Sometimes the competitor says, I would like to see you at 25 meters, or I would like you, don't worry about it, you can just meet me at 20 meters. So we kind of cater to what the competitor wants or what they're used to. And that makes them feel comfortable, and that makes them do a good job where they're diving. The number two, so that's the primary guy. He's meeting him at 30 meters. The secondary guy is going to meet the diver at 20 to 25 meters. Okay? So those two individuals are the ones that are going to be talking to the athlete as they're coming out onto the competition line. They're the ones hooking up the lanyard, okay? And they have to make sure that the lanyard is hooked up, each one of them, okay? The primary hooks or the primary checks the lanyard first, and he says to the secondary, lanyard is on and secure, and we actually make sure that the wrist, the lanyard's secure on the wrist or around the waist, and that it has a quick release and that everything looks good. We make sure that it's clipped and it's not wrapped with any loops. If there's a loop on it, we tell the athlete, hey, you've got a loop on your lanyard. I'm just going to go ahead and fix it for you. I fix it, and then we hand it right back to the athlete to clip back on. We clip it on, and we say, again, lanyard is on and secure. And then the secondary guy says, lanyard is on and secure. So then we make sure that they have an official gauge on, and that's still the primary and secondary guy. Now, the official gauge should have already been put on by a previous safety diver. So as they get into the comp zone, they're not trying to put on a watch. They've already got it on. But we want to make sure we call that out. We say official gauge is on, and then the secondary says official gauge is on. And then the primary again has one more check. We have 3 checks. The check is depth. Okay? The primary and secondary divers adjust and set the line along with what we call the platform coordinator. Platform coordinator is really the guy who is looking at all the marks, making sure all the marks. But we're taking mental notes as the safety team. The primary's looking, the secondary guys, he's watching the line. We've been diving on the same line, the same marks for the past month. We know where the lines are. That makes a huge difference because we had an issue in Cyprus where there was a problem with the line. Mm-hmm. Again, it goes back to the safety team being on site at least 2 weeks prior to the competition beginning. Okay? That way we have it all covered. We've seen it so many times. If there's a piece of tape that slid down, we know. Okay? So we check the depth. We say depth check, whatever the depth is, 60 meters. And then the secondary guy will actually dive down, look at the tape, put his gauge on the tape below, the 10-meter mark below, and again, verify that we are at the right depth. The platform coordinator can actually see the marks on the back side of the counterballast, so he knows exactly where the marks are as well. So we do that. Again, those 3, check the lanyard, check the official gauge, and then check the depth. Make sure the depth is set properly. And then we can go and do our breathe up as the 2 main guys. Now, again, the primary safety diver meets at 30. The secondary safety diver meets 20 to 25 range. It depends on where you are and what kind of visibility you have. Again, as far as depth is concerned, where you should be. The number 3 guy is the number 1 backup. He's also the surface safety. He's going to be assisting with the lift in the event of a blackout. And then the primary and secondary are the guys giving the primary care to the victim. Say there was a blackout, a surface blackout, where it went from it didn't go from it went from a loss of motor control or samba to a blackout, then basically it just kind of depends on that whole situation, which there's tons of different situations, but that's kind of how we work it, as far as checklists and that sort of thing.
Obviously, every competition that goes by and every year that goes by, you learn a little bit more and can apply that to future competitions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alex also wants to know, because he's in Barbados and he understands that you periodically visit Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
He says, do you have any trips planned for 2018-19, and how about hopping over to Barbados? I think you already said that you're going there this year, right?
Well, we're actually going. We go to Trinidad and Tobago every year. We go down there and teach we teach 2 classes. One in Trinidad, that's our freediver level course, and I don't know if Alex knows this, but spearfishing is becoming huge in Trinidad, and they love
Alex
it.
is actually Alex. I
A
think
spear,
spear
I'm sure.
Yeah, he's a spearer.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of his free diving. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go over there for 2 weeks and try to keep these guys from killing themselves.
Right.
They pretty much know they recently had one of their buddies pass away, spearfishing. And of course, if you hear of a spear fisherman who dies freediving, they broke the first rule of freediving.
Right. Never dive alone.
Yeah, you just never dive alone. And the guys all want to try to kill as much as they can, and their buddy is slowing them up or whatever the reason. And we try to really push that on those guys and just emphasize how very important. And I think they just got a big wake-up call on top of what we've been telling them for the past 3 or 4 years that we've been going to Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. So yeah, we love Trinidad and Tobago. They're great islands. I don't know if Alex is originally from Barbados, but man, the Eastern Caribbean, the Caribbean island, the Caribbean in general is just, it's an amazing place. There's different cultures. It's just a really neat mixing pot. People from all over the world going to a really, really special part of the world where there's beautiful oceans, beautiful people, beautiful food, beautiful land. Yeah. It's a wonderful place.
Nice. Well, there you go, Alex. Ren and Ashley are definitely coming your way, so maybe you guys are going to bump into each other.
We're there middle of March this year, 2018. Mid-March.
So I always ask if my guests have some kind of morning ritual or way that they start the day every day. I'm guessing things might be like a little bit up in the air for you that way with a three-month-old baby and a 4-year-old kid.
Well, I can just kind of tell you what I can kind of give you an idea of what we do now, and then I'll tell you what we do when we're training. Right now, our mornings are just so easy. I wake up and I put some coffee on, and we have a cup of coffee, and we have a really, really short window that Ashley and I can kind of communicate a little bit. Our 3-month-old you can't hold the guy with one hand, you have to hold him with 2, otherwise he's not happy. And that's kind of what our life, and I go off to work, say 10 o'clock or so, and then I don't come back until later in the afternoon. Sometimes my schedule's different. So I live a pretty normal life. I guess most of us freedivers are living what we live now.
when we are free diving, we're living on the boat, so we live fairly inexpensively. You know, we have the boat because we like to travel really awesome places and live in really awesome places for long periods of time. And we couldn't do it unless we had the sailboat. I mean, I want to go to Greece to free dive. I want to go to Indonesia to free dive, but we're not in a position to be able to do that. So we afford those pleasures via the sailboat. When we're on the sailboat, we pretty much, if we're training, we have a light little meal, maybe some oats, or I like to put some seeds and nuts and things in my stuff. And we go out diving. I don't do anything crazy as far as coffee when I'm diving. I try to give myself as many advantages as I possibly can. I need all I can get. That's kind of what we got going on. You know, fairly normal. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary.
Mm-hmm. So you managed to hold off on your morning coffee before you go diving?
Well, I tell you, we really kind of when we're in the training mode, like where we are now, I have a coffee every day, every morning. I mean, that's kind of like the ritual. I wake up, I have a cup of coffee, and then I kind of start my day. When we get back on the boat, we'll have our cup of coffee, but especially if we're doing some diving, doing some training, we probably taper off of coffee altogether and just make it a special treat that we only have maybe, I don't know, once a week.
Nice. I like how you're kind of serious about that. It's inspires me to watch my coffee intake during my next extended training period.
If you want to do well, yeah, you have to dedicate yourself.
Oh, I know.
I mean,
it makes a massive difference, you know, like for me, it's like it's literally like a 10-meter difference, you know, in like what I'm comfortable diving. I get a really strong response from coffee. I love to get that like really big wake up in the morning when I drink my coffee, like, you know, I love that ritual, but at the same time, if I drink the coffee before I dive, the difference is huge, you know, so it's something that's really hard for me to you know, I really have to force myself to maybe even just wait until after the diving to enjoy the coffee rather than do it before. But yeah, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, it does. You know, so yeah, we get serious. We really do. Our diet is completely different. I mean, right now, or this morning, I actually had some bacon. Oh, it's but that doesn't happen so much when we get going and actually have some goals and our serious training. You know, it's real encouraging. Actually, just a couple weeks ago, Ashley said, you know, Ren, I really want to get back in shape. You know, she's coming off. She's only 3 months out of our little boy, and she's like, I really want to get in shape. I feel more motivated now than I feel like I've ever been. So it's exciting to get into that same. There's no better living than to be eating healthy, to be exercising, which free diving doesn't sound like a whole lot of exercising, but anyone that doesn't do it.
Yeah, I think most of our listeners will appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's the best living you can ever do to yourself. You're coming out of the water, you're tired, but you're healthy, you're strong. I mean, it has to be the best sport for you. It really does. It has to be, because I've never seen a guy who's a free diver, like a true free diver, who is not just
in the best shape ever. I mean, these guys are like epitome of the perfect shape. I mean, and they're doing it by their diet. They're doing it by everything. Any advantage they can get. William Trubridge will tell you right now. He said, "Listen, I am not the most talented swimmer. He'll tell you, I don't have the biggest lungs, but he works his butt off, and he has learned. I bet he has. I'm just guessing, but he has a ton of dietary books. He knows everything about his body. He's going to get every advantage that he can. That's what you have to do to beat a William Trubridge. That's what you have to do to be an Alexei Molchanov. That's what you have to do to be the best.
I'm on it, Ren. I'm on it.
Do it.
Give me a couple of years.
You got to quit your job, man.
Yeah, that's coming. That's coming at some point. So one more question. I don't know how much time you have to read. Can you recommend a book or an author for the listeners? You know, for those long drives or travels between dive sites. You know, like on the beach during the dive trip holiday. Do you have a book that you can recommend?
I was trying to figure this out because I've been listening to your podcast, and you know, I don't have a particular book that I would put my hand on, that I would say, yeah, this is what I'd recommend. You know, I read a lot. I read very little entertainment type reads, which is sad. I feel deprived because Ashley can just get lost in a book, and I'm looking over at her going, oh man, she's lost in that book. I wish I was so lost in that book. But I'm constantly reading. I'm reading constantly, and I couldn't pinpoint exactly one particular book that I would say, hey, yeah, you guys have to read this. I could say the next one again, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of the same. Like, I love to get lost in a big, like, epic novel, but I just find that these days, for the last few years especially, like, I read so much nonfiction. My interests are so diverse, and I have a Kindle, and I have 4 or 5 different books going on at the same time, you know, and I end up not reading anything completely.
I think you just have to read.
Yeah. What I do periodically is I erase all the books from my Kindle, and then I'll put like 2 or 3 on there, and then I find that 2 months later I've got like 15 again on the list, because I just keep thinking, I remember I bought that book a year and a half ago. Let's pull that one back up, you know. And it's a completely different subject, and I forget what I was doing with the last one. But I think just read. Yeah, it's not going to do you any harm. That's for sure.
Don't you have a new sponsor? Why would you ever read again?
Say again.
I was baiting you for the question. Don't you have a new sponsor?
All right.
Because with your new sponsor, I think you could just like listen to books now, right?
You know, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. The thing is, I've already, like, you know, Audible is a subsidiary of Amazon. I've already like spent so much money and bought so many books from Amazon that it's going to probably take me like the next 15 years to read them.
Make it up on audio.
I'm not quite at the point where I can just like sit back and like enjoy my audiobooks. If people want to find you on social media or get in touch with you, where can they find you? What is your website address? Are you on Facebook?
So our website address is evolvefreediving, all one word, .com. And you can find us on the website, through the website, via email, through the website. And we're on social media, Evolve Freediving on Facebook. We even have an Instagram, Evolve Freediving on Instagram. So we should easily be found if we want to be found.
Nice. Yep. So for the listeners who are listening, that's it. And those addresses and pages will be on the show notes. Check it out. One more time, thank you, Ren. It's been awesome. Let's do it again sometime.
Hey, Donnie, it was good chatting with you. Good luck with this, man. I think you should keep right on pumping it. I have been enjoying it. I really have. It's been a nice little way to spend a afternoon. Not talking with you, but listening to your podcast.
Yeah. I know.
Talking to you is nice too, Donnie.
All right. Okay. I was gonna say talking to me sucks, but if you enjoy the podcast, that's all right.
Exactly.
Okay. I'll let you get on with. I'll let you wind down your day, your Saturday, and I'm gonna get going with my Sunday and get out into the day. So have a nice evening, and
Okay,
hopefully
Donnie.
talk
Take care,
to
man.
you and Ashley again at some point.
There you go.
Okay.
See you, buddy.
All right. Take it easy. Bye bye. That was Ren Chapman, one of the best long chats I've had on the show, and I just love how down to earth himself and Ashley are. Ashley was amazing too when she did her interview, and you can hear that in a few weeks. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. You can get in touch and let me know what you think about it. Now I'm going to wrap this up and get over to my little island paradise of Xiaoliuqiu and celebrate the Chinese New Year with some diving. If you ever have any questions or suggestions, feel free to contact me through the contact page on the website. You can also add me on Facebook, where I am Donny Mac, DONNYMAC, and on Instagram as Donny McFar, DONNYMCFAR. Don't forget to subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode, and of course, as always, dive safe.